For more than 40 years, Jon Bon Jovi has appeared in public as a rock legend, glamorous, magnetic, and admired by millions. But few people have ever stopped to wonder, who was the woman standing beside him before the fame? And what made her stay after all these years? That woman is Dorothea Hurley, someone who has spent most of her life avoiding the spotlight. When she rarely opened up about their 36-plus-year marriage, she didn't describe it as a fairy tale. For Dorothea, marriage has been a journey defined by sacrifice, endurance, and difficult choices that not everyone is strong enough to make. From their high school romance to the years tested by overwhelming fame, Dorothea has witnessed every version of the man the world believes it knows. But behind the doors of their family life lies a very different truth, one that, once revealed, may make many people see this seemingly perfect marriage in a completely new light. High school love and the first sacrifices. In the late 1970s, the halls of Sayreville War Memorial High School in New Jersey looked like any other American high school. Teenagers worried about grades, sports, and weekend plans. Among them was a boy named Jon Bon Jovi, still going by his birth name, Jon Bon Jovi. He was charming, energetic, and well-liked, but not particularly focused. Few teachers would have predicted that he would one day sell out stadiums around the world. Music was already part of his life, but at the time it looked more like a hobby than a future. He played in small local bands, rehearsed in basements and garages, and chased opportunities that often led nowhere. His ambitions were bigger than his circumstances, yet success still felt distant. Dorothea Hurley first saw something different, according to Jon. They met after he tried to copy her homework, a small moment that unexpectedly sparked a connection. Dorothea was disciplined, confident, and known among classmates for her focus. She practiced karate seriously and competed at a high level. Where Jon was restless, Dorothea was grounded. Their personalities balanced each other almost immediately. The turning point came when Dorothea watched Jon perform at a friend's garage. On stage, even a makeshift one, he seemed transformed. The uncertainty disappeared. He moved with confidence, sang with intensity, and commanded attention in a way that felt natural rather than rehearsed. That was the moment she understood that music was not just something he enjoyed. It was who he was becoming. Unlike many teenage relationships that fade after graduation, their bond deepened quickly. Friends later described them as inseparable. When Jon talked about leaving New Jersey to pursue music, Dorothea did not try to hold him back. Instead, she accepted early that loving someone with big dreams meant learning how to stand slightly to the side. The first real test came in 1983, when the band Bon Jovi officially formed. The demands were immediate and relentless: rehearsals, small gigs, networking, recording demos, chasing radio play. Jon threw himself completely into the pursuit. Dorothea quietly adjusted her life around that reality. She worked as a karate instructor and maintained a structured routine while Jon's schedule became increasingly unpredictable. She handled everyday responsibilities: laundry, bills, errands, creating stability, while his life tilted toward chaos. Years later, she explained her mindset simply. She knew he needed more space, more attention, and more freedom than most people. It was not a resignation. It was a conscious choice. Publicly, they looked like the ultimate young rock couple of the 1980s. Big hair, tight jeans, confident smiles. Photographs suggested excitement and possibility. But the private reality was far less glamorous. As the band gained traction, Jon was often gone for nearly 200 days a year. Touring meant long stretches without phone calls, missed holidays, and milestones experienced separately. Dorothea learned how to live independently, while still emotionally committed to someone whose life was accelerating. Isolation became part of the bargain long before fame truly arrived. Yet she stayed, not because it was easy, but because even then she seemed to understand something many people learn much later. Loving a person with an extraordinary path often requires an equally extraordinary level of patience. What few could see at the time was that these early years were quietly shaping the foundation of a marriage that would later be tested by global fame, temptation, and pressure, forces far greater than anything two teenagers in New Jersey could have imagined. The first major test, Breakup, Diane Lane, and the lesson of forgiveness. By 1985, success was no longer a distant dream for Jon Bon Jovi. The band was gaining national attention. Radio stations were playing their songs, and touring schedules grew heavier each month. What once felt exciting quickly became exhausting. Not just for Jon, but for Dorothea Hurley as well. After nearly 5 years together, the pressure began to show. Jon spent months on the road, surrounded by industry figures, fans, and constant temptation. Meanwhile, Dorothea remained anchored in a quieter life back home. The emotional distance widened. At some point, it no longer felt like they were living in the same world. Dorothea later admitted that keeping up with the speed of his rising fame was difficult. Everything around Jon was changing rapidly. His environment, his priorities, even the people he met. For the first time, their relationship felt uncertain. Then came the breakup. Not long afterward, Jon entered a relationship with Hollywood actress Diane Lane. The romance lasted only a few months, but its impact was significant. Unlike private struggles that remain hidden, this relationship played out in the public eye. Dorothea did not hear about it quietly. She saw it in headlines. The experience was deeply painful. Beyond heartbreak was a harsher realization. She could be replaced. Yet Dorothea refused to turn her pain into a public spectacle. She did not give angry interviews. She did not criticize Jon to the press. She avoided anything that might make her appear like a bitter former partner seeking attention through his growing fame. Her silence was deliberate, a form of self-respect rather than weakness. Behind that silence, however, was the emotional weight of watching someone she had loved since adolescence build a life that suddenly seemed to have no space for her. But the separation did not last. Jon eventually returned, recognizing that the connection he had with Dorothea was not easily replicated. He later summarized the realization in simple terms. It was always supposed to be her. Reconciliation did not erase the hurt. Instead, it reshaped the relationship into something more mature and more realistic. Dorothea chose to forgive, but forgiveness did not mean forgetting. She became more emotionally aware, more protective of her own boundaries. Over time, she accepted an unspoken rule common in the entertainment world: never ask questions you are not prepared to hear answered. This was not denial. It was survival. The lesson Dorothea carried forward was clear. Forgiveness is not blind loyalty. It is a conscious decision to continue loving someone even while acknowledging the scars that remain. Rather than weakening their bond, this difficult chapter forced both of them to confront what they truly meant to each other. In many ways, this early crisis became a quiet foundation for the decades that followed. Because once a relationship survives the fear of being replaced, it often emerges stronger, built not on illusion, but on choice, the secret wedding, and the industry backlash. By 1989, Jon Bon Jovi had become one of the biggest rock stars in America. With sold-out tours, multi-platinum albums, and a carefully crafted public image built around charm and availability. At the very moment when his career demanded control and predictability, he made a decision that was neither planned nor approved by anyone in his professional circle. He asked Dorothea Hurley to marry him immediately. During a tour stop in Los Angeles, Jon suggested they escape to Las Vegas. There was no engagement ring presentation, no strategic announcement, and no discussion with managers. within hours. They arrived at the Graceland Wedding Chapel, where the ceremony unfolded with striking simplicity. No family members were present, no celebrity friends filled the pews, and the only witness was reportedly a taxi driver who had just brought them there. Dorothea wore no traditional wedding gown, carried no bouquet, and walked into marriage without the theatrical elements typically expected from a rock star's life. The moment was quiet, almost disarmingly normal, yet deeply intentional, a private promise made in a world that rarely allowed them privacy. For Jon and Dorothea, the spontaneity symbolized certainty after years of breakups, reconciliation, and growing fame. Choosing each other without permission felt like reclaiming control over their own story. However, the reaction from the music industry was swift and overwhelmingly negative. Executives and managers worried that marriage would shatter the illusion that fueled Jon's popularity. His status as an attractive, unattached frontman was not just personal, it was part of a profitable marketing formula. To them, the wedding threatened the fantasy that helped sell millions of records. The disappointment soon spread beyond industry offices. Many fans reacted emotionally, some even angrily, struggling to accept that the man they admired was no longer available to imagination. In that climate, Dorothea was quietly pushed toward invisibility. She was discouraged from giving interviews, advised against frequent public appearances, and subtly positioned away from the spotlight so the brand could remain intact. This created a difficult emotional paradox. Instead of feeling publicly welcomed as a wife, Dorothea sometimes sensed she was being treated as a liability, a complication in a machine designed to preserve desire and mystery. It was not unreasonable for her to wonder whether a day might come when Jon would have to choose between protecting his career and protecting their marriage. Yet his response never wavered. Jon did not apologize for marrying her, nor did he attempt to downplay the decision to calm industry fears. By standing firmly beside his choice, he made it clear that the relationship was not negotiable. Dorothea, in turn, accepted a life largely outside public view, understanding that privacy was not a sacrifice imposed on her, but a boundary that could safeguard what mattered most. Rather than resent the shadows, she learned to see them as protective space, a place where their marriage could grow without constant scrutiny. In hindsight, the modest Las Vegas ceremony revealed something essential about their partnership. While fame could shape nearly every aspect of Jon Bon Jovi's public identity, the most important decisions of his life were still guided by loyalty, conviction, and a quiet refusal to let the industry dictate whom he was allowed to love. The rock and roll years, infidelity, fame, and emotional weight. As the 1990s unfolded, Jon Bon Jovi was no longer simply successful. He was globally recognized, constantly touring, and surrounded by attention in every city he entered. Fame expanded his world in ways few people experience, and with that expansion came temptation that was almost built into the lifestyle. In recent interviews, Jon has spoken more openly about that period, admitting that he was not a saint and acknowledging that there were many women during his years on the road. He framed those experiences as part of the excess and entitlement embedded in rock culture, emphasizing that they were not long-term relationships or emotional replacements for his marriage, but moments tied to ego, access, and power. For Dorothea Hurley, those admissions were neither shocking nor entirely new. She understood the environment long before the public did. However, understanding did not mean approval. Dorothea viewed those choices less as romantic betrayal and more as expressions of privilege, the kind of entitlement that fame can quietly encourage. She recognized that the world treated male rock stars differently, often excusing behavior that would destroy a woman's reputation overnight. If she had behaved the same way, she knew she would have been condemned, not admired. That imbalance was not abstract. It was personal. Dorothea did not confront every rumor, nor did she demand detailed confessions. Instead, she adopted what she once described as a survival mindset. She would not ask questions she did not truly want answered. Her boundary was clear in its simplicity. If Jon was not emotionally investing in another woman or building a parallel life, then the core of their marriage remained intact. It was not naivete, it was a calculated line drawn to protect the foundation of their family. Emotionally, the distinction required discipline. Dorothea learned to separate Jon at home from Jon on stage. The man at home was present with his children, dependable in private decisions, and invested in their shared life. The man on stage existed in a different ecosystem, fueled by applause, adrenaline, and constant validation. She understood that those two versions could coexist, even if she did not always accept the choices made by one of them. Over time, the cost of that duality became clearer to Jon himself. As years passed and their children grew, he began to see that fleeting attention could never replace long-term stability. The applause ended each night, but the consequences of his actions would not. Gradually, his priorities shifted. He spoke about maturity not as an overnight transformation, but as a realization that nothing in his career was worth losing his family. For Dorothea, forgiveness became less about excusing behavior and more about preserving dignity. She refused to compete with strangers for attention, refused to turn private pain into public drama, and refused to allow resentment to define her identity. Maintaining composure was not weakness, it was strength under pressure. Surviving the rock and roll years required more than loyalty. It required emotional restraint, self-awareness, and the ability to see beyond moments of ego-driven mistakes. In that period, Dorothea did not simply endure fame, she managed it from the inside, choosing stability over spectacle and commitment over pride. Building a family, 4 children, and private battles. While Jon Bon Jovi continued to dominate arenas and charts, Dorothea Hurley was quietly building the center of their real life. A family. Their first child, Stephanie, was born in 1993, followed by Jesse in 1995, Jake in 2002, and Romeo in 2004. Each birth marked a new chapter, but it also reinforced a reality that Dorothea had long accepted. Much of the day-to-day responsibility would fall to her. Touring schedules rarely aligned with school calendars, birthdays, or family dinners. Jon was often thousands of miles away, performing for crowds while Dorothea managed homework, illnesses, discipline, and routines at home. She became the logistical backbone of the household, ensuring that life remained stable even when their public world was anything but predictable. Rather than resent the imbalance, she approached it with practicality, understanding that someone had to provide consistency for the children. One of the clearest examples of that unpredictability came in 2002 when Dorothea went into labor with Jake. At the time, reaching Jon proved unexpectedly difficult. Phone lines were overwhelmed by fans trying to contact the star, and for a tense period, communication failed entirely. Only through the intervention of his management team was Jon finally located and rushed back in time for the birth. The incident underscored a recurring truth. Fame could interfere even with life's most urgent moments. A decade later, the family faced a far more frightening crisis. In 2012, their daughter Stephanie suffered a heroin overdose while attending college. The emergency forced Jon and Dorothea into a moment of stark clarity. Success, wealth, and recognition offered no protection against the vulnerabilities that touch many families. What mattered in that moment was not celebrity status, but parental presence. The experience prompted deep reflection. Both parents began prioritizing availability over obligation, shifting focus from professional momentum to emotional connection. It was a reminder that being physically present, not just supportive from afar, was essential. Throughout these years, Dorothea functioned as what many close to the family have described as the stabilizing force. She preserved traditions, protected the children from excessive exposure, and created an environment where Jon could step out of the rock star identity and fully inhabit the role of father when he returned home. Her influence helped narrow the gap between his public persona and his private responsibilities. In many ways, Dorothea became the quiet architect of balance within a life tilted by fame. By holding the family together during absences, emergencies, and emotional strain, she ensured that their home remained more than just a stop between tours. It remained the place that ultimately grounded them all. Reconnection through philanthropy and the pandemic. By the mid-2000s, after decades defined by touring cycles and professional demands, Jon Bon Jovi and Dorothea Hurley began channeling their energy into something that extended beyond music and family. In 2006, they founded the Jon Bon Jovi Soul Foundation with a clear mission: address issues of hunger and affordable housing in American communities. The initiative started modestly, helping fund the construction of 15 homes in Philadelphia. But the effort steadily expanded into hundreds of housing units and community programs designed to offer long-term stability rather than temporary relief. Dorothea played a central operational role from the beginning. While Jon's name attracted attention and donors, she focused on execution, overseeing projects, shaping strategy, and ensuring that the work remained grounded in dignity rather than charity alone. Their later creation, the JBJ Soul Kitchen, reflected that philosophy. The community restaurant operates on a pay-it-forward model, allowing guests to either pay for their meals or volunteer their time. The goal was simple but powerful. No one should feel ashamed to sit down for a proper meal. For Dorothea, the foundation became more than a joint project. It was a space where her voice carried equal weight. She once summarized their partnership with quiet clarity. Jon brought the visibility, but she brought the vision. Working toward shared humanitarian goals helped repair the emotional distance that years of touring had created. Instead of living parallel lives, they were now building something side by side. Then came 2020 and the global disruption of COVID-19. For the first time in decades, Jon was not constantly boarding planes or moving between cities. Tours stopped, schedules cleared, and the family found itself under one roof for an extended period. The sudden stillness felt unfamiliar at first, but it soon turned into something unexpectedly valuable. They cooked meals together, spent evenings talking rather than coordinating logistics, and rediscovered rhythms that relentless travel had long interrupted. The pause also reinforced their commitment to service, rather than shutting down operations entirely. JBJ Soul Kitchen adapted by offering takeout meals to reduce health risks while continuing to support vulnerable communities. Even in uncertainty, the work did not stop. It simply evolved. The pandemic ultimately gave Jon and Dorothea something fame had rarely allowed: uninterrupted time. Within that quieter space, their relationship shifted subtly from endurance to partnership. They were no longer just managing a life shaped by celebrity. They were actively choosing how to live it together. What emerged from those months was not dramatic transformation, but renewed clarity. After decades of motion, they were reminded that beyond the noise of success, their strongest connection had always been rooted in shared purpose and in the rare ability to grow not only as a couple, but as equals. Why Dorothea spoke out, and recent updates. For most of her adult life, Dorothea Hurley chose silence. She avoided headlines, declined personal publicity, and allowed the world to focus almost entirely on Jon Bon Jovi. That restraint was never accidental. It was a boundary she set early to protect both her family and her sense of self. Yet after more than 36 years of marriage, Dorothea reached a point where remaining invisible no longer felt necessary. At around 62, she began opening up more candidly about her life. not to settle scores or rewrite the past, but to reclaim ownership of her story. For decades, she had been described primarily as the rock star's wife, a label that overlooked the discipline, endurance, and emotional strength required to sustain a marriage under relentless public scrutiny. When explaining her shift, Dorothea expressed it with characteristic simplicity. She had chosen privacy, but now wanted to be recognized as an individual, not just a supporting figure. The timing reflected confidence rather than frustration. By this stage of life, the foundation of their marriage was already proven. Their children were grown, and public curiosity no longer carried the same threat it once had. Speaking out became less about revelation and more about acknowledgement, a quiet assertion that strength does not always need to announce itself to be real. Recent years have reinforced the image of a couple still deeply aligned. In 2025, Jon publicly marked their 36th wedding anniversary with a throwback wedding photo and a bouquet of roses, a gesture that signaled both affection and continuity. Their philanthropic work also remained active, with the JBJ Soul Kitchen continuing to serve communities during major holidays such as Thanksgiving. Where both Jon and Dorothea have been seen volunteering side by side, Dorothea has also appeared more comfortably in public settings, joining Jon at widely watched events, including Christmas in Rockefeller Center, the U.S. Open, and pre-game festivities connected to Super Bowl 60. These appearances did not signal a personality change so much as a relaxed confidence, the sense that she no longer needed to stay hidden to preserve what they had built. Their family life entered a new chapter when their son, Jon Bon Jovi, married actress Millie Bobby Brown, drawing fresh media attention to the Bon Jovi family. Observers quickly noted the physical resemblance between Jake and his mother, a reminder of how strongly her presence echoes across generations. Taken together, these updates suggest not a dramatic reinvention, but a steady evolution. Jon and Dorothea appear less concerned with image and more focused on impact, investing time in family, philanthropy, and shared priorities after decades shaped by fame's turbulence. Their partnership now projects something quieter yet more durable, stability chosen again and again, long after the spotlight has lost its urgency. Conclusion: the legacy of a resilient love. The story of Dorothea Hurley and Jon Bon Jovi does not follow the script of a glamorous rock fairy tale. Instead, it traces a path that began with teenage love in New Jersey and stretched across decades marked by fame, distance, temptation, family crises, and personal growth. Their marriage endured not because life was easy, but because both repeatedly chose commitment over convenience. In a culture fascinated by short-lived celebrity relationships, their partnership stands as quiet evidence that real love is often built through persistence rather than perfection. Dorothea's role within that journey reveals a form of strength that rarely demands attention. Her sacrifices were deliberate, yet they never erased her identity. She adapted without disappearing, supported without surrendering her values, and forgave without losing her dignity. What emerges is not the portrait of a passive partner, but of a woman who understood that resilience is less about dramatic gestures and more about steady presence when it matters most. Their story invites an uncomfortable but honest question. Would you continue loving someone through the hardest seasons if you believed something stronger could exist on the other side? Dorothea's answer, demonstrated through decades rather than words, suggests that enduring love is less about avoiding hardship and more about deciding what is worth fighting for. Today, with their children grown and their shared philanthropic work continuing, Jon and Dorothea appear grounded in a phase defined less by celebrity and more by purpose. They remain a rare example of longevity in an industry known for impermanence, offering a reminder that forgiveness and loyalty can coexist with personal evolution. Perhaps Jon summarized it best when reflecting on their marriage with simple gratitude. 36 amazing years. Behind that brief statement lies a lifetime of choices and a legacy that proves the strongest love stories are not the loudest, but the ones that endure